Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome ANDP President and CEO, John O'Callaghan.
Good morning, everybody. Let's give folks 15 seconds to find their way. So I am seeing some people for the very first time live, but I've known them from Zoom for 3 years. So am I really meeting them? I really appreciate everyone coming. We had invited slightly fewer because we wanted some spacing, but we were worried in the post-pandemic, would folks come out for a morning celebration, and y'all did. It means so much. I really appreciate it. This is a special space for us. We love the Carter Center. When big things happen, like foreclosure crisis, we had 2 HUD secretaries here to try to get attention. We have started having our anniversary event, and in life, as you get older, you don't necessarily want to celebrate it every year, so we celebrate the birthday every 5 years. And we learned from the Olympics. Actually, our 30th birthday was last year, and COVID was a little bit more active then than it is now. So we're really 31 years, but we are celebrating 30 years. We will invite you back in 4 years to celebrate 35. The fact that this organization has been here for 31 years is important. We are standing. We're going to spend time looking forward, a little bit of time in today, but also time looking back. I'll pull up Hattie in a little bit, but I am just personally so thankful for her work, her staff team's work, her amazing board's work to really sort of lift this issue. And I've run into leaders. Today I was just talking to Carmen Chubb, who was talking about how Mickey influenced her housing vision. She'd been in like something business-like at DCA. And there's Ron Terwilliger, there's a bunch of folks. So we're going to celebrate that. Today is about celebration, but we do need to remember the times that we are in. It's been hard for low-income people all along. In this country, we've had a real estate system that's been based on delivery of needed housing and home ownership and wealth, largely with systemic embedded racial barriers. My dad went to Georgia Tech, like everybody else. He grew up in an apartment during the recession. They didn't have much money. Gets out of World War II. He's a high school graduate from the all-white boys' high. Gets into Georgia Tech for free, gets out, gets a VA loan, about for free, starts a business out of that house, has an economic problem, as all real estate developers do, taps into the mortgage, continues, gets me through school, gets me through Georgia Tech. But if you wanted to live in a neighborhood of color, you couldn't do it. You couldn't get that benefit. And so we're dealing with that today. We're dealing with high inflation. We're dealing with tax credits that don't go as far. We're dealing with larger demand for 4% credits in that delivery system. We love home ownership. Interest rates are 7%, where they're going to go. There's a lot to bemoan, but I remember I was sharing with Sharon Gay. She was our board chair when the foreclosure crisis came, so it was really a sort of startling time. Tom Rowick, who's our treasurer, and Hattie and Ray had some money in the bank, so we were able to get through it. But we started with 6 homes, and people said, why would you just do 6 homes? There's so much to be done. It's because those 6 families were helped. So today, we're going to celebrate the families that are being helped and the difference that is being made. Part of today's program is really about celebrating great achievements, and so we're gonna hand out some awards, and those awards are for the individuals or the organizations, but they're also reflective of the people that are in this room. We're in Atlanta, we're working in neighborhoods, but it's the partnership that is the secret sauce. How do you loop the funders with the residents and community leaders, with builders who don't have money that can go into a neighborhood, with private sector folks who are, need some resources to make it more affordable? It is that partnership that we are going to be celebrating today. One of the things we're going to be celebrating is our relationship with NeighborWorks America. We're at the Carter Center. President Carter was instrumental in forming NeighborWorks America, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But being in this space is really, really special. One of the things we do in NeighborWorks is they really review you to make sure that you sort of meet the minimum criteria, right? And we're now getting some A's. I was used to getting C's when I went to Georgia Tech. So it took us a while to sort of build up to their very high standards. But one of the things that I am most proud of is they came and looked at the partnership between our board and our staff and everybody that we engage with. And it's not a staff wants to do this, board wants to do this. It is we do it together. It is individual board members, so Mark Pollack and Tayani's here. We had a property that was in trouble. They got together outside of the board meeting and what's the best practice to do that. We've got great committees. We've got an amazing board. I've had, I think now 8 board chairs. They've all been the right person for the right time and also for what I needed to grow. I have an extraordinary board chair that has become a friend, Tiffany Kirk, who's vice president for regions. Tiffany, I'd like to turn it over to you to bring some remarks and share our little film that George put together. Please come on up.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us for ANDP's 30th anniversary celebration. As John mentioned, we have a very accomplished and committed board of directors, and it's been my privilege to serve as chair for ANDP this past year. It is my honor today to introduce the 30th anniversary video that highlights some of our many accomplishments over 3 decades of service to the region. But before we cue the video, I would like to take a point of personal privilege to celebrate the leadership of our tireless President and CEO, John O'Callaghan. It's been my distinct pleasure to become friends with and work closely with John, and I'm consistently inspired by John's strategic and generous leadership style. He lifts the ANDP board, staff, and our partners to do our best work in service to our critical affordable housing mission, and he's always 5 steps ahead. So thank you, John, and thank you for your deep commitment to making this region a better place to live and for your devotion to the mission of ANDP. And now let's take a few minutes to look back at ANDP's past, present, and where we're going in the future. Thank you.
When my dad got out of World War II, he was able to get a near zero down, low-cost loan from the Veterans Administration and buy a home. And if you were a soldier of color, you weren't able to take advantage of that financing because federal government programs wouldn't invest in a neighborhood that had even one family of color. We need to create home ownership now to deal with family success decades, perhaps centuries from now. We have 1 month of supply of homes in Metro Atlanta. There's just not enough inventory. And when you are competing against investors who have cash, homeowners generally are going to need to get an FHA mortgage. They may need to line up down payment assistance. If we as a not-for-profit can buy a home that needs some renovation, renovate that home, and then offer it on a first-look basis to lower-income families, we can give buyers a fair chance at getting a home that they can afford. The challenges are overwhelming, and we just have to continue to do more.
Most cities that are making strong strides in addressing their housing affordability challenges have a significant amount of density. Atlanta has less density now than we had 40 years ago. About 60% of the city is zoned single-family residential.
Atlanta's predominantly a single-family home market. That's great. We just need to be able to get smaller, well-designed single-family homes that work for families, but we need to get more of them on an acre lot.
As policymakers, we have to be willing and open for every idea that comes to the table to help housing affordability in our city.
Families need stability. Our homeowners are stable in their communities, and that stability creates wealth. The future is going to be defined by that family success that ties so much to wealth. Thanks to George Bergen for working on the video. We are a little cheap. We actually love that we're very good stewards. The middle portion was actually done by the Urban Institute, a national piece that's really trying to focus on using home ownership not only to provide affordable housing, but really address systemic-based wealth gaps that are related to home ownership. So we appreciate that piece, and they interviewed Terry and I because Atlanta is a key piece of the national story. It is my honor at this point to pull up in a minute after I say a couple of things. Hattie Dorsey. I met Hattie in 1989. I had the pleasure, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work for Maynard Jackson in his third successful campaign for mayor. And after the elections were earlier in October, there was a longer time for a transition. And so I was fortunate enough to work with Art Cummings on the transition team.
And my job was, to fix the coffee and take the notes, and then you'd call people to schedule meetings. You couldn't even fax a meeting request at that point. And I got randomly assigned the housing working group, which I did use on my resume when I applied for later jobs at Fannie Mae, even though I really had nothing to do with the housing. And I was like, Maynard ran, we'll talk about this a little bit later, ran on a platform, Five for the Future, that included housing. I'd grown up here, I love politics, I'd worked in mayoral campaigns since a kid. I'd never heard anybody talk about housing as a political issue, maybe because I was growing up in white neighborhoods and it was less of an issue, maybe because he was a visionary and saw it. But then at the meetings, I found out, wow, good leaders listen to smart people. So Hattie was there with Bruce Gunter was there. A bunch of people in this room were there, and they were essentially framing the need for ANDP. And I didn't understand any of it, but I remember going to the press release later where Hattie was there, had been, helped form it, was within Maynard's administration through what is now Invest Atlanta, and the Atlanta Chamber had an independent group, and we came together. And that group, that board, that staff, did the hard stuff. People really weren't paying attention to the issue. There were no tools before then. All of us have been in meetings where everybody talks about the language, what is area median income and other things, and the folks in this room have figured that out. We go to some places, they still don't know the language. All that work had to be done. Ron Terwilliger says, I learned housing from Hattie Dorsey. Well, what did Ron Terwilliger do? Wow, he went on and was board chair of Habitat International. I think of Urban Land Institute, had been board chair here. Shirley Franklin said, well, I learned housing from Hattie Dorsey. There are so many people in this room and elsewhere that learned from Hattie, and she recruited a great team. The other thing I'm thankful for is they were really good financial stewards. I came in, had to do some fundraising. I'd done politics in United Way. Raising money for a 501c3 is a little bit different. I had some stuff to learn, and when I was learning it, recession came, and we had good stewardship. Tom Rowick was then treasurer, and there was money in the bank. Ray reminds Ray Kunyansky every time I say him, we left you money in the bank. Thank you, because we didn't want to lose that history. And from that history, I'm proud of what we have been able to continue to do. But without that groundwork, we wouldn't be here at year 31. So I first want to say thank you for your commitment and all that you have done. And I never know what Hattie's going to say, but I'm always really interested. Come on up. We do have a time limit, but bless you, Hattie. Come on up.
Thank you so very much. I did not come with prepared statements, so I will ramble and say how very appreciative I am to be here celebrating 30 years. Going back down memory lane, I remember the time when what my ideas were when I returned back to Atlanta and found too many neighborhoods that I used to play around in, go to school in, had deteriorated to the point that they had deteriorated. And I had read from afar, because I lived in California at that time, read from afar how wonderful Atlanta was. We had elected a black mayor. We had done this, we had done that. But on my return back to Atlanta, I found neighborhoods in disrepair. Neighborhoods that I used to travel in, play in, go to school in were not the neighborhoods that I found when I returned. And so Maynard Jackson, Valerie, was the mayor at that time, and I started talking to him because I had learned some lessons working for a private foundation, living in California, that the corporate community could make a difference in where they resided. And they had been untouched. And so Maynard and I had very many conversations about reaching out to the corporate community, making certain that they reinvested in the communities they resided in and worked in, that their people who lived in the neighborhoods had to go oftentimes back home to a place that was not safe. And so I started those conversations. We battled backwards and forwards. And I decided that we were going to do something with the neighborhood's involvement. And so that's where the neighborhood development part of the name came from, the Atlanta Neighborhood Development. And then also there was the private sector that was left untouched with reference to giving contributions. And so I said, why are the corporate community left off the hook? Why aren't we knocking at their doors, telling them to reinvest back in the communities where they employ people, et cetera? And so ANDP grew out of those kinds of questions that were being raised at various tables. My other side of it was that if we were going to work in neighborhoods, we had to have a core neighborhood-based agencies that would look out for their own neighborhoods, learn how to work with the community, reinvest back into the community, and make a difference. And so today, 30 years later, what do we have? A brand new city just about. A brand new city where people of all levels of income can continue to live. And a lot of that was based on what ANDP put in place. ANDP put in place what we call mixed income communities to make certain that people, no matter what their income, could have and find a place to live, close to where they work, close to the schools, and on and on. So I tell you with a lot of humility, that is so great, and it brings tears. So great to stand here 30 years later and see what you all have continued to do. John, thank you so very much. To the board of ANDP, thank you so very much for continuing to meet and carry on the challenge. I see Tom Rorick, who was at Delta Airlines at that time, and I see young Hugh Lee and others who were at the table saying, we can do this. And the corporate community stepped to the plate, and they brought the basic resources, not the government, where everybody used to depend on, but the private sector. So I'm so glad that, John, that you're continuing to carry out the visions and the objectives that we've put in place, and that 30 years later, you're still here. So thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here and to say that to you.
That was fabulous. When we were created, we served the city of Atlanta, and the region started growing. Today, 88% of the poverty is in the region. The city is still ripe for displacement. There's a whole Decatur table dealing with their success and how do you include. Thank you all for being here. And as I was coming in, it's like, well, how do we get that community voice? Many of the CDCs, some are still thriving in the city. Others, recession's hard. A lot of not-for-profits went out of business, and how do you keep that legacy? And young Hughley was on our board, and Young was a member of NeighborWorks, and said, NeighborWorks has got a program, the Community Leadership Institute and community engagement, and that's a model. Don Phoenix came on our board, and we'll talk in a minute about Don. And So we invested in that. How do you do it where there might not be an organization? It's people from the city, but it's people from South DeKalb and South Fulton. And we've got a crew of our Community Leadership Institute folks. We call it CLI. I've got a little bit of lights. If all our CLI participants and alumni would stand so we can recognize y'all. Thank you. Thanks for all you do to be a leader in your neighborhood. When you're trying to serve a region, we don't get to know every neighbor on the street, but in working with the leaders, we can hopefully influence a better outcome. That's a great segue for our first award. This award was named after Hattie, was a surprise at our 15-year anniversary that we honored Hattie with the first Hattie Dorsey Award, and it's designed to recognize outstanding leadership and community development for not-for-profit. So if you work at a not-for-profit, you're a not-for-profit board member, you work at government, if you're an elected official, we're going to put you into the Maynard Jackson Award because you're changing policy. You're all part of this. Today, we are honoring a special leader, Don Phoenix. Don is an extraordinary servant leader. Don had worked in the banking industry at Carver Bank in Savannah, saw the need for an engaged not-for-profit, helped found the local NeighborWorks organization in Savannah, had shown talent, came from the lending, he understood how stuff worked, and became head of the Southeast region for NeighborWorks America. I'd mentioned that it's from Carter, funded out of the federal appropriations to support about 250 higher capacity organizations. There are about 6 of them in teeny tiny Vermont because in the American South, there hadn't been investment. Hattie sort of brought that corporate investment. It was a new model here. And in Georgia today, there are three of us, but Don took over the South. And when he started, there wasn't a lot happening. But today, Quest is part of it. Kathy Williams drove up from Columbus, Georgia, NeighborWorks Columbus. We work together, and we're along with other Southeast leaders. There's a lot going on in the South. And if you're working on racial equity, you ought to be in the American South. And now it's like the top region. It's an extraordinary turnaround. Christy Cade is here. Christy, come on up. We're going to ask you to come up for the photo. But we are honoring Don not only for what he did. He helped usher ANDP in. He and Christy and others were helping to get Quest, so Atlanta is represented. He built the South, but he is that servant leader. Unlike myself, and maybe Hattie, my God, you just got it all in a short amount of time. Don, when he speaks, you listen, because he's just not going to speak to bring attention to himself. He's not about that. But he has extraordinary wisdom. And as we went through all kinds of transition, because if you're in this work, it's foreclosure one year, it's underwater neighborhoods the next year. After that, it is rampant price increases and too much investment. And today it's 7% interest rates. You got to be adaptable. You need great advisors. Don, we appreciate you so much for all that you have done. If you would come up, we're going to take a picture first with all the awardees and present you with the award, and then we'd love a few remarks from you. Please come on up. Don Phoenix. Let's get the award. You get in the middle. Hattie, come on up too. It's the Hattie Dorsey Award. You go to the middle. And it's very pretty. You can look at it after. Thank you. Michael's going to get it. How's that? Right here? Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you, Don. Please. Oh, please, please. Share some of that wisdom that I put some pressure on you.
So I get the mic again. This feels good. Haven't done this in a while. I'm so honored. Wow, this is great. Not honored for the good work, but to receive an award that's named after Hattie Dorsey is just something that doesn't happen every day. And thank you, Hattie, for your trailblazing effort that made it possible for me to be here today. I want to thank all of you out there because you make the work enjoyable. You make it happen. I just hang around you. Like to hang around smart people. And that's why you have Christy Cade, who hung around me for a few years and stepped right in my shoes and everybody forgot about me. No, she is really good. But I want to take time to do something that's very important. I want to recognize my wife, Sandra Phoenix. Stand up, Sandra. I started out, and should I say, John, that I started out in 1977 as a CRA officer? Nobody would know what that means. But and through all those travels, from being a CRA officer to actually being the housing director for the city of Savannah for a while, and then running the nonprofit NeighborWorks organization in Savannah after I found it, I really realized that the most fulfilling job that I ever had was on the ground running the nonprofit. I mean, being from banking and from housing and running all those crazy government programs, you get to talk about widgets and all those outputs. But being on the ground, working with community, you see the impact of your work. And that's been very rewarding to me over the years. And I just want to thank all of you for being the support that I needed in those years. But Kate Little, are you there? When I came from Savannah to Atlanta, I realized that the problem was widespread in Georgia, and it was widespread in the South. And in Georgia in particular, we did not have community development infrastructure. So Kate and I and some others got together and formed this statewide organization traveling in places that I'd never been back to in Georgia. And it was quite rewarding to see now that we have organizations throughout Georgia that are really productive in their community. That's because of the work that we did. It's called Georgia Act now, right? We had all kind of different names for it over the years. But I want to thank you for your work. And my mentor in this work when I came to Atlanta was Young Hewley. And Young retired a few years, and he would call me up every 6 months and say, "Are you retired yet?" I'm not retired. I decided not to use that terminology. I just don't work for NeighborWorks anymore. But I'm out, productive. My grandkids keep me busy. And I am able to get out in the community. As recently as last week, I was in the Delta, and I felt so good being in the Delta, seeing the work being done. With that, I'm going to just thank you for indulging me. And look out of your door once in a while. I might be out there. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Don. Christy, we're particularly proud of. Christy had worked with Tayani, our team, in developing our single-family model. I was talking to others. We started with 6 homes in the foreclosure crisis, and each year tried to be the engine that did more. It's just great to benefit from her leadership running NeighborWorks Southeast office. One of the things I'd mentioned in Hattie's legacy is, influencing people like Ron Terwilliger, and board is very important. Thanks to all of you who give board service and do that well. And, this time we're like, who do we honor for extraordinary board service, just not at ANDP, although this individual did serve on our board, was chair, but more broader for the community and particularly for affordable housing. And, the name that kept coming up was Sharon Gay. Sharon, prior to running for mayor, had been running Denton's, which is a darn big law firm, and that was pretty cool. I got to know Sharon when she was at City Hall managing what is usually a ruly council with Steve Leibovitz, and I was an appointed 2-year member there, and I was like, wow, extraordinary leadership to get the right things done, irregardless of politics or where people were coming, providing clear information, transparency, and building trust, and was blessed to have her. When I joined ANDP, she was running the Mixed Income Communities Initiative that keeps coming up. It was an effort by ANDP to broaden the reach, work on policy, get people to understand the importance of this work, and did an extraordinary job. She was our board chair when all heck broke loose, which was during the foreclosure crisis. And in 2008, although I was an elected official, our best work was some policy work that Sharon helped steer us through, and we started those first 6 foreclosed homes. She was active in forming the 4th Ward Park Conservancy, which was a neat new effort. But I think the most impactful work, Sharon, we appreciate what you did at ANDP, but there was a task force at the Urban Land Institute that came out of the Livable Cities Initiative, and Sharon had leadership posts there, but she took the Affordable Housing Task Force. Sarah Kirsch was like the staff person there. I think she's doing something with affordable housing now, I understand, and really framed a plan that non-technical, not-for-profit folks could understand, that had input from real developers and other sources. And that became the framework for a plan that has been adopted by 2 mayors, by House ATL, and a broader movement that is going. It was extraordinary work. It was a one-time task force, time and place, but it was an extraordinary work. Those differences in leadership, you never know. When it's the right time, the right place, it makes a difference. Sharon, thank you so much. Please come up. I'm going to present you the award, take a picture, and we'd love to hear from you.
Somebody's alarm is going off. I haven't even started talking. I'm honored, John, and all of them thought this up, but I'm delighted to be here in the room with all these people who believe in the mission and do the hard work. I told my husband, Neil Shim, who's with me today, I said, come here and see all my pals who've worked with on all this stuff you've heard about for years, but never really met a lot of these folks. I first learned about the notion of affordable housing being something important when I was in the mayor's office. As John mentioned, it was 1994. I was beginning the first term of the Campbell administration. We were frantically getting the city ready for the Olympics and working on bridges and stadiums and all these big things, and who knocks on our door but Hattie Dorsey, are you seeing a theme here? And she comes to us and says, don't forget about affordability. Don't forget about the need to keep these Olympic neighborhoods affordable to the people who've lived there for years. And I'd never thought about it. And I quickly was converted, and we did try to focus on that some. When I left the government and went into private practice, helped work on the tax allocation districts that are first being created in Atlanta, and we put in affordability components. The Atlantic Station affordable housing requirements, Mike Dobbins, who was the planning commissioner at the time, and I literally wrote it on the back of an envelope. But it was already accepted as something that was important in public policy roles. And then I continued to work on regional transportation issues, kept trying to get commuter rail. That one's still not done. And then, as John said, I was on the board because, of course, Hattie comes to you and says, I want you on this board, and you do it. But as I was reading that chronology, that little 2008, 2009 entry doesn't begin to describe the drama and the pain of trying to figure out what to do in a massive recession to keep the mission going. And I remember standing in the shower that morning, and we were having an executive committee meeting. I do a lot of thinking in the shower, thinking we need to reinvent ourselves. And that's what we went on to do. And ANDP has been a model for the nation in so many of those things. But as I think about this work and think about the things I've tried to work on, I always go back to the passage in Deuteronomy. We live in cities we did not build. We drink from wells we did not dig. We reap from vineyards we did not plant. That, to me, is the essence of community development. The work that all of you in this room do, and that what I've tried to help a little bit with, will reap benefits for generations after us and after them. That is the important work, and thanks to all of you for what you continue to do. And thank you for this honor.
So this is a new award for us, shouldn't have been. It's about partnership. And everything we do as we have evolved, if we build a home, it's because we have 6 or 7 great smaller home builders who partner with us in our capital and build it. If we build apartments, it's because there are great private sector developers who might work with us where we own the land and can keep it affordable, but include us as part of the deal. One of the ways we learned partnership was coming out of the recession. Our loan fund, like banks, we went to affordable housing, got hit. People couldn't pay us back. We sort of worked with church borrowers and not-for-profit borrowers and worked through it. And it was time to look at what do we do next. We were $3 million. We had $2 million of equity. We had $1 million that we were worried was going to be taken away from the last bank investor. But we were really too small to hire the staff you need to run it. And so we talked to Reinvestment Fund. I knew their leader from board service. He was in vacation with his partner in Atlanta, came by and said, we've made a big difference in the Mid-Atlantic, and we're looking at racial equity and other issues. We want to come to the South, but ANDP, I don't want to step on your toes. If you've got Atlanta, that's fine. We'll get somewhere else. Said, no, we're a $3 million loan fund. We haven't done a loan in 2 or 3 years. Please come. Said yes. And I said, we want to grow our loan fund. Again, young Hughley was saying, keep the CDFI. That's going to be important. And so we've grown that loan fund. Mandy Eidson leads it. It's now $18 million. Some of the financial strength has actually allowed us to have a $20 million internal fund that we can do construction loans internally and not charge fees, which is part of our homeownership secret sauce. But that partnership really taught us we need a great business partner. Kathy Williams' group does our down payment assistance. Somebody's always there that's great in the business, and we do the mission and the finance, and our board oversees it. But this partner, I remember the first negotiation. I'm like, well, if you're underwriting all our loans, you're servicing all our loans, you're updating our policies and procedures, you are presenting to our committee, we raise our own capital, make our own decisions, you're advising staff, the number you gave me for fees should be more. We aren't paying you enough. And they said, no, we get value. You know Atlanta. You have a relationship. Your mission's our mission. You can't afford to pay us anymore. That's the type of negotiation you like to have. That's the type of partner that you like to have. Reinvestment Fund has been that partner, has helped us see the value of that partner and develop it in everything we do. Christina Stefanski runs the Southeast, but they are all about Metro Atlanta, all about Georgia. So I'm like, we're talking tomorrow. So we started with $3 million. They hadn't done anything. We hadn't made a loan. So we literally, 3-year period, invested zero. Said, how much together since we started this 8 years ago have we done? $200 million together, because every loan they underwrite, and we'll take a piece, they'll take a piece. Sometimes they take it all. They've got more money than we do, but we do it together. $200 million, about 2,500 units of housing. Partnership. Christina, please come up. We love working with you. We love working with everybody on your team. Where are you? Yay! That's for Megan. This is for us. Please share some remarks.
Thank you, John. And thank you to all of your exceptional colleagues at ANDP. On behalf of Reinvestment Fund, and especially my Atlanta-based colleagues here today, Natasha Dawa and Cleve Davis, our Atlanta-based board member, Mike Davis, who's here, our CEO, Don, and our executive team, I'm honored to humbly accept the first ANDP Award of Excellence in Community Development Partnership. For those of you who are less familiar with Reinvestment Fund, we're a 37-year-old mission-driven financial institution committed to making communities work for all people. Since our founding, we have invested $2.4 billion of capital in supporting developers creating affordable housing, places to live, but also in providing access to nutritious food and healthcare, creating and supporting schools from the youngest amongst us, through most recently HBCUs and other institutions of higher learning. We have been working with ANDP since that fateful conversation that John had at a Housing Partnership Network conference actually back in 2014. ANDP was ready to restart its loan fund for much needed access to capital for affordable housing developers that are not able to access traditional sources of capital. We started by providing underwriting and servicing support. Our first loan that we underwrote from ANDP supported a 92-unit transit-oriented development affordable housing project at the Avondale MARTA stop. When Reinvestment Fund's strategic partnership plan called for opening a second office, Atlanta definitely topped the list because of our partnership with ANDP. They welcomed us here and invited us to join them at all of the tables that they've sat in since their founding 30 years ago. Their willingness at all levels to share their credibility and authority in neighborhood development allowed our organization to begin our entry into the Georgia market, I'll say on second base as a baseball reference, given the Braves just swept the Mets. Our partnership moved primarily from back office to front office with the sharing of an employee in 2016. And in 2017, when we opened the Reinvestment Fund office across the hall from ANDP, I might add. Together, we invested over $19 million in that first year, more than we had combined in the previous 3 years. And as John just shared, our investments have been on an upward trajectory since then, approaching 200 million collectively, and actually almost 2,700 housing units. And I'll say that again, over 2,674 quality homes and counting. That's families stabilized. And actually, it's going to go up this month. We have 2 more loans expected to close, including one in East Lake in the community land trust model. Because this partnership, we work to do what makes sense and make it right. It doesn't need to, they don't always pencil from the get-go. It requires solutioning and getting together on the table. So the partnership between our organization is truly one of where collective impact is much greater than what we are able to do alone. I'll end with a short anecdote, which is one of my proudest partner moments so far. Deep in the last 2 years of uncertainty, our team was talking with Mandy Eidson and John about a problem local housing nonprofits were having. They're having to use their own working capital really to bridge grants and loan grants from federal government, and that's very nascent resources to house people, and it's a funded grant. And most nonprofits don't have that kind of working capital on hand to be able to do that. John said, let's bridge that money at no cost. This is a crisis moment, and we need to use the tool that we have to respond. But more importantly, let's model and bring light and voice to this issue so that others will join us, and all of these households in need can have shelter and stability. And that's what ANDP does. Sharon actually said it, they're a model for the nation. This partnership, the work that they do. And so I just want to end by saying congratulations to ANDP on the 30 years. We truly cannot wait to partner and deepen our relationship over the next 30. Thank you.
There are some other CDFIs here. We're actually in a state collaborative with a group in Southwest Georgia, NeighborWorks Columbus, Enterprise, out of the Community Foundation. There's become even more in impact investing. That whole group is really working together collaboratively, and we love starting our journey in collaboration with the Reinvestment Fund. So for the last award, Public Policy, I'm going to defer and introduce the person that is presenting the award. I'd like anybody that is an elected official, I can't see, but I want to thank you for your service. I know I saw the mayor of Decatur. There are others. Please stand if you are an elected official. I'd like to applaud you and thank you for what you are doing. So we all debate what's the definition of affordable housing and what percent, and the reality is the sector we're in is, where does the private sector stop? And the private sector can create housing where the economics work, and they do it very well. And we love working with private sector partners because they do it really well. But if you're serving lower income people and the private sector can't do it, subsidy is needed. And the government needs to take a lead. You can do it, you can change the zoning and make the land difference. You can have a housing opportunity bond. You can have a tax allocation district that puts it in, as Sharon has been involved. But that federal government subsidy attracts the private sector. The private sector wants to know, and private sector, I mean philanthropy, impact investment. That public policy is critical. And Hattie and the Mickey, one of the things it really did was it educated a lot of people, but here in Atlanta, Atlanta's really a weed. We all want more, and we're going to advocate for more, and we're honoring the mayor, and it's our job to advocate for them. But Atlanta's doing a lot of things right. Decatur and others are picking it up. So policy is key. Bill Bowling is here. The Housing Forum has been central to that, and it's important. I've already shared with you how important Maynard Jackson was to me. It is my pleasure to introduce Valerie Richardson Jackson. Valerie is board chair for Jackmont Hospitality. One of my favorite WABE shows was Between the Lines and Valerie Jackson's conversation. Oh, such a great show. Valerie's become a friend, a partner in this work. I appreciate you so much. This award is named after Maynard. Hattie went into some of the history. I had a chance to staff him at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I didn't understand the policy stuff he was working on. He was talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and HUD and low-income housing tax credits. He was ahead of his time in framing national policy around. So we saw it here, but it was happening nationally as well. So I actually called her, because everybody wants to name something after Maynard, right? I called her, said, can we please do this award? And the first award went to a very close friend of Hattie's, but not because she was a close friend of Hattie's. It's because she was an amazing advocate for housing. That's Shirley Franklin. And so my only job here, I'm going to turn over to Valerie to make the award, and then I'll come up for the photo, is there's a link from Maynard Jackson to Shirley Franklin to our honoree today. And those are three great leaders that have made an extraordinary contribution. Maynard's legacy lives on. Shirley's in the business with Purpose Built. And this mayor has only begun. The future, I believe, after hopefully 8 years, is going to be extraordinary. Valerie, thank you so much for presenting the Maynard H. Jackson Award for Extraordinary Service. I'll remain on the sides, and after you do the introduction, we'll take a photo and let LaShondra.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful that John invited me to be a part of this celebration this morning, the 30th anniversary of ANDP. And I continue to be impressed and proud of the priorities of ANDP, focusing on generating affordable housing, especially for low-income people. Whether it's through rehabbing or affordable loans, ANDP is making it possible for many more people to afford homes and to stay in them, which is an important part of it. As I listened to some of the stories this morning, I thought this work really does start in the heart, because it's concern and love for other people and their welfare that is what makes ANDP possible. And that kind of concern really does start in the heart. I'm really impressed with all of the participants and the associates of ANDP, and I want to thank you so much for your work. My hat's off to you, and it's not a pun. Well, maybe a little one, okay. As a matter of fact, the last time I was with the group, it was for the 25th celebration, the 25th anniversary, when former Mayor Shirley Franklin received the Maynard H. Jackson Award for Community Development Public Policy. That's a mouthful. And I would say, too, that one of Maynard's favorite words was the word excellence. I'm sure if you worked with Maynard, you heard it a lot. I want excellence here. I don't want just good, I want excellence. And so I know he would really appreciate that word in the award names here this morning. So thank you on Maynard's behalf for that. I'm delighted to see that yet another mayor has continued to carry the ball for affordable housing and neighborhood development. Mayor Dickens' commitment to affordable housing and housing policy, however, really started when he was on the city council. There he wrote and championed groundbreaking zoning legislation regarding new rental developments in the Beltline and on the West Side neighborhood, requiring them to provide affordably priced units. He also authored legislation that requires any development that receives public dollars to have some affordable units in their project. And he created the fund and program to rehab senior homes along the Beltline West Side Trail, creating the $40 million Housing Opportunity Bond. As mayor, now that was all before he was mayor, but as mayor, he has committed to building or preserving 20,000 units of affordable housing within 8 years, and that's no small job. He's worked with the Atlanta City Council to establish and fund the beloved Community Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This fund is supported actually by a recurring allotment of 2% of the city's annual budget, and that's no small change either. Most recently, Mayor Dickens created the Affordable Housing Strike Force, which ensured that there was coordination between these departments, the city departments, and the organizations that they were working with in prioritizing development projects. The Strike Force will also partner with nonprofits, faith-based, and private developers to achieve its goals of affordable housing. It's often said, or at least I've often heard from this group, that solving the affordable housing crisis will require using all the tools in the toolbox. Well, we are happy to see that Mayor Dickens, I know that happens a lot to him, and I'm embarrassed that I did it. Mayor Dickens not only employed all of the tools in the box, but he brought a few extra ones to the toolbox, and I commend him for that. I am just these were just a few reasons why Mayor Andre Dickens deserves the Maynard H. Jackson Award for Excellence in Community Development Public Policy. I've personally spoken with the mayor at other functions, and I've told him what a great job I think he's doing, and I can't remember the last time I've heard so many compliments from so many different segments of the community, the business community, the faith community, the nonprofit community. So many compliments about Mayor Dickens and what a great job he's doing, and I agree with them. Unfortunately, Mayor Dickens couldn't be with us this morning, but accepting the award on his behalf is our esteemed Deputy Chief Operating Officer for the City of Atlanta, LaShondra Burks. Would you welcome to Ms. Burks?
Let's see, we've got too many awards. There we go. That's it.
Right
You,
there.
you had the perfect touch.
Join us
Chandra,
with
we'll
the
put
photo
you in
first.
the middle. Chandra's a houser, a partner from Enterprise Community Partners. So fabulous that you were here representing.
Good morning. I tell you, I am pleased and humbled to be here to accept this award on behalf of the Honorable Mayor Andre Dickens. And any of you here today must know that he had a major conflict in order for him not to be here for this. And again, we do have Atlanta City Council President Shipman here with us today, so thank you for being here as well. Mayor Dickens applauds ANDP's commitment to changing the lives of Atlantans through homeownership
especially through the Closing the Gap initiative to build or preserve 2,000 units by 2025. If many of you have heard Mayor Andre Dickens talk, you have often heard him say that many initiatives he may not have started, but it is his job right now to either move them forward or to finish them. He has put forth what we call our Moving Atlanta Forward agenda. And there are two things that you will always hear him talk about. One is having a safe Atlanta, and two is affordable housing. You have heard from many today, especially the esteemed Mrs. Valerie Jackson, that in his first term, he committed to over $7 million to an affordable housing trust fund. You heard about all that he did as a council member. His commitment now to 20,000 units of new or preserved affordable housing over 8 years, and we strongly believe that this is attainable, but it is not without ANDP and with so many of you others in the room. I'm a native Atlantan, the daughter of 92-year-old native Atlantans. And the name Maynard Holbrook Jackson has always been a name in our household. I started my now 27-plus year career with the city of Atlanta during the time that Mayor Jackson was mayor. I remember this gentle giant continuing to show up at City Hall after his mayoral term, Mrs. Jackson. He wanted to make sure that City Hall was open to the public on time. And he always talked to us in the mayor's office about having a library card. I'll never forget that. Look at Ms. Jackson say, oh, yes. And even when you hear the word Office of Contract Compliance for the City of Atlanta, you can't mention it without mentioning the name of Mayor Jackson. Because it is that office whose mission is to mitigate the efforts in past and present discrimination against women and minority-owned businesses. We are always reminded of Mayor Jackson saying, if you don't like affirmative action, what is your plan to guarantee a level playing field opportunity? I worked for Mayor Shirley Franklin when the airport was renamed Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport with Maynard H. Jackson International Terminal. And now it is the world's busiest and most efficient airport. Mayor Franklin often said that Maynard Jackson included the name international in the airport before we even had international flights. That's a true visionary. Hartsfield-Jackson will see $3.2 billion in construction projects in Mayor Dickens' first term. Can you even imagine the benefits of minority and women businesses during the next 4 years? This is Mayor Dickens' Moving Atlanta Forward, based on Mayor Jackson's initiatives. Again, thank you to ANDP for honoring Mayor Dickens, and congratulations on 30 years of continuing this affordable housing legacy. From your founding CEO, Hattie Dorsey, who is not shy about encouraging the mayor to focus on community development and affordable housing, to the current CEO and President, John O'Callaghan, who I think is equally not as shy, Hattie. We look forward as a city, and the mayor definitely looks forward to continuing our ongoing partnership with ANDP. Again, congratulations.
Thanks for that reminder. 31 years, there have been two of us. I had my granddaughter born at the beginning of the football season. I went to Georgia Tech, so the family joke is she's going to have 3 coaches before her first birthday. It's hard to win when you do that. Sometimes you got to stick around. We've been sticking around 31 years. We're going to continue to stick around. At this point, I'd really like to ask all our staff, all our board, all our former staff, all our former board just to stand up, please, if y'all wouldn't mind doing that. Thank you. Thanks to George Bergen, who manages our leases, works with Bill on the Housing Forum, gets out our communication special projects, and has to be our every 5-year party planner too. Fabulous job in doing that, as well as the whole staff that benefited him. So quick look ahead. If this is news to you, we aren't doing our job well, but sometimes you got to say something a few times. The not-for-profit community of which we are a part is really getting its act together in Atlanta. Private sector is doing great work, but the not-for-profit has to put together some of those subsidies, partner with the private. We have a very special role to play. There are other colleagues that are here, and we need to measure this, but observationally, I think if you compare the last 5 years to the prior, the not-for-profits are developing 3 to 4 times more. We also lend to for-profits. Impact investments need to go there. There's a broader sector. ANDP has to play its role. If somebody's taking over, is working in Grove Park or West Side, and they are the community quarterback, what can we do to help you? Do you need to access New Markets tax credit? Can we help you? If you got it, that's great. Because Clayton County, we've got a strong habitat, but there's not much else. There's a lot to be done. So that's part of our plan. How do we help those other not-for-profits, those for-profits, and then do what we do best and follow, in some cases, financing, New Markets tax credit, which is subsidy for home ownership, which is hard to find. And then in some areas, we have to lead. We've got some of our community leaders. There's not an NPU system in most counties in Metro Atlanta. We've got one in Atlanta. Maynard Jackson started it, so you've got some of that community engagement. We need to prove that production can be done at scale. The plan that ULI and now the community has adopted, the mayor has adopted, they're big gaps, but you got to start. So we had doubled in the prior 4 or 5 years. We're like, okay, we've got to figure out how to double again. So there's some aspiration in this number, but we're going to do it. We came out and committed in mid-2020. We actually didn't announce it till September because we wanted to get a lead grant, but started the plan for 5.5 years. It's really about 6 years of production. Any home that we develop after the start of our fiscal year, 2020, through any home that we've started. We broke ground, we've raised the money. But there are going to be 2,000 of them. Some of them, we're a junior not-for-profit partner. We're adding value. Some of them, we're buying the land and ensure that it's going to be affordable forever. Some of them are home ownership. They're homes that would not have been built without our development partners and our capital. 500 home ownership homes, and we measured the results in Atlanta, Georgia. Folks who've owned our home from 5 to 9 years. They had accumulated over $130,000 of wealth each, and they had affordable housing, and they're locked in at low mortgage, so we're proud of that. We're going to do 250 single-family rental homes, and our hope is that if those appreciate, which we think they will, maybe not this year, but we think they will, then you can take some of that appreciation and maybe turn it into a second mortgage and create home ownership later, or affordable rental that's in a single-family setting that's needed too. And then the apartments, we want as many of them as possible not to be affordable for the governmental 15 or 30 years, but for 65 years or longer. That is our plan. The flexible dollars are the most important. We need charitable dollars to get the equity, to get the new markets tax credit, to get the capital magnet, to buy the land, to then leverage it with resources coming from the city, resources coming from the federal government, and now resources coming from the state for the first time. And with impact level debt, CDFI debt, and even some bank debt. So altogether, when we announced it, it's about $440 million. We'd had a 3% price escalation. We're working on that modeling, but it's probably going to be closer to $500 million. We're going to leverage those charitable dollars 25 to 1. We have made great progress. So homes that we finished, homes that are in development, homes that we have the funding and the tax credit, but you're waiting to close, we're a little bit over halfway. We're over 1,000. I think I need to look at the exact count. I should have had it in my notes, but 1,200. The charitable dollars are key because you want to buy land today to build it not next month. It takes a little bit of time. So we're trying to get land, and this is a good time to be buying land. But that charitable campaign, the community has responded. Hattie was very successful as we were building for the Olympics in our early history. And during the foreclosure crisis, we were not successful in getting as much philanthropy, but people know this is an issue now. And so we are over 2/3 of the way, about 13 million of the 18 million. But getting there, the bigger grants tend to come in early. We hope to get some more bigger grants. Banks have known us, and there are a couple of foundations we had prior, but we are broadening that. We've got 7% interest. We are figuring the market. We're adopting every moment, but we are going to find a way to build 2,000, and that's going to change those homes, but hopefully provide inspiration for everyone else, not for profit, for profit in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta, that if you set your sights on developing at scale, because the problem is big, we don't build one perfect home. We try to build as many homes as we can that are green, that are low energy, but in a style that our partners know how to build. We don't have one style. And that's sort of our special. In some places, if you're in a historic neighborhood, you've got to do it a different way. But we are filling those spaces. Y'all have gotten us to this point. Y'all are going to get us to the 2,000, and more work will then need to be done. It is so delightful to have my stress streams go from what's going on with the Fed rate to, am I going to appropriately lose my remarks or acknowledge somebody or make a mistake? It was just wonderful dreaming the past couple of nights because it felt like celebration. We are celebrating 31 years. We today are building a lot of homes, and we need 2,000 in the city. Not all ours are going to be in the city. A lot of them are. You tell the mayor. But they're going to be in Decatur, and they're going to be other places. Council Preston, a lot of them are in the city. But we're going to do our part, and we equally want to help others do theirs. No one is a competitor that's doing this work. Our mission is to meet the housing needs. So all of you that are working at other not-for-profits or private developers, keep doing it. We aren't going to solve the problem. We will not solve the problem. But we are going to make a dent, and there are going to be tens of thousands of families who will have a different trajectory. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking time with us. Thanks so much. Those that received an award, give them 10 seconds to head here because we want to take a group photo. And so if y'all would head this way, if you gave or received an award. To everyone else, thank you for being here. If I hadn't been able to say thanks personally, I'm going to hang around for a little bit. Other staff as well. Thanks.